Dear respected Thai, dear brothers and sisters, so this morning we have what we call a question and answer session. Sometimes we say question and response. We don't necessarily have an answer, but we do have our experience, each one of us. And I think up here there's more than 50 years of practice experience in mindfulness here in Plum Village, combined. And that doesn't mean that our experience is better or less than anyone else's. But it's nice to have friends on the path. And we in Plum Village in Thai always use the phrase Kalyana Mitra, which means a good spiritual friend. Thai never put himself like a guru. We're not a guru culture, we're having good spiritual friends culture. So we are surrounded here by good spiritual friends on the path, practicing together as a community. And so if we have a deep question in our heart, then we invite you to come up here and ask your question, and then the monks and nuns will do our best to respond based on our experience. A good question can help many people. You don't have to feel so alone that the question you have only has to do with you. If it's a real question from the heart, you find that it has to do with all of us. And it can be very healing to ask a question that has to do with your suffering, also with your happiness. And a good question doesn't have to be long. If you want to ask your question in French or Spanish or Italian or any other language, that's wonderful. I think we have the capacity up here to deal with the French question or Italian, but if in Spanish as well. But if it's another language, then if you could bring a translator. And when you ask the question, maybe we will restate it, so we make sure we understand it correctly. So we invite you to come up here. If you have a question, you can bring a cushion and then sit there. So maybe we have a few questions. We'll do our best to answer what we can in the time we have. And if you feel too shy to come up, you can also write down your question and pass it forward to Brother Tin Chi, who's at the bell. Maybe we'll answer one or two written questions, and if we don't get to all the written questions, then we will... Wow, okay. So, okay. So I think maybe I also ask the support of my brothers and sisters. We'll try to keep our answers short so that we can address as many as possible, giving them the full benefit of our whole practice experience. And I would encourage, because I don't know if we'll answer all of the questions of those who've come up here, even if you come up and you don't get a chance to ask your question, if you can write it down also, because then we will pass those questions on to wonderful Sister Hinim, who will be giving the talk tomorrow, and so she can have a chance also to respond to those questions which are not yet answered this morning. Okay, I'll just briefly introduce my brothers and sisters up here, because I realize we often come up here, we don't even say our name. So on my left is Sister Downie. She's Sister Peach Blossom. So she ordained just a month before I did, about more than 15 years ago. But before that, she practiced for 20 years now, more than 20 years in the Shivananda yoga tradition. in an ashram, and she came to Plum Village, inspired by Thay's teaching, and to live her life fully as a nun. And she's originally from France. My name is Brother Phap, means true current of the Dhamma, and I'm from the US, and I ordained 1 month after Sister Downing, 2003. And I do a lot of, I love to work with children and also to do hiking retreats in nature. That's my little bit of selfishness. I like to organize hiking retreats so I get to hike and practice at the same time. This is Brother Bieu from Italy, from Verona, and he ordained in 2008. And he's one of our very active young Dhamma teachers here in Plum Village, and he's somehow Brother Bieu ordained from Italy, and then he's had regularly, almost every year, one younger Italian brother ordaining. So I really admire his his Sangha building capacity. He's a very good Sangha builder. My American brothers seem to come and go, but the Italian brothers, they stick around a long time. And I really admire Phap Bieu's capacity to be a good older brother to his Italian brothers. And then Sister Lang Nim, Sister March of Heroes. I like to call her Sister Hero, but she doesn't, I don't know if she likes that. But she's a real hero. She's, for me, she loves very deeply Thay's teaching, and is very, has given her life, as many of us have, to make it available to, especially to young people. And she's very active, also working on producing Thay's books. Many, as you saw in the documentary last night, Thay's written more than 100 books, but only a fraction of them have been translated into English. So one of her deep commitments is to make a lot of those Vietnamese texts available for all of you to read, especially around Buddhist psychology and the kind of deeper teachings of the Buddhism. And she's originally from Vietnam, but she grew up in the United States. And she's also all of our elder sisters. She ordained a year before I did. Actually, the three of us, we all ordained in 2003. So kind of, that was a year of many ordinations. So I think that's a good start. So we'll maybe listen to another sound of the bell, and then we can listen to the first question.
Hello everybody. Hello all of you. My question is what to do when like already in the morning you notice already during the meditation that your mind is very active and taking you into all of the things, all of the thoughts, and connected with a lot of emotions. So that's very hard to concentrate. But what to do, like with that, when you can't, when you feel like you want so many things to do in the day, and it's hard to pick a thing to focus your attention on, and then do a lot of things, and in the end of the day, still you have still to have the feeling not to feel fulfilled of the day, that there's still so much to do.
So the question is, when our mind is very active, already early in the morning, already maybe running, and it's difficult to concentrate. And then even we do many things in a day, but even still at the end of the day we don't feel fulfilled. Yeah. So how to practice with this?
Short answer. I think it's a matter of training, of learning how to slow down, and you have to have some experience in doing so. It's just like when you first learn how to do sitting meditation, it's difficult to sit more than 3 minutes. But after you practice for a while, you're able to sit 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Some of the monks and nuns for a whole hour, 2 hours, without feeling disturbed or restless. And they can be quite at peace sitting for 1 or 2 hours. So it's a matter of training. Just like when we eat, how we eat our food. Like before, I didn't think about eating at all. And then when I came to Plum Village and I learned about mindful eating, just being able to slow down while I'm eating and paying attention to what I'm eating, the way I'm taking in the food is different. And at the end of every meal now, I feel full. I feel satisfied at the end of every meal. And that's because I'm able to savor every moment while eating, each morsel of food while I'm eating. So it's a matter of slowing down and registering the things that are happening to you. And the more you're able to take note, register what is really happening to you in your body, in your mind, and having the experience to deal with them as well. At the end of the day, you would see that you have accomplished quite a lot. So it's a matter of training. I also have an active mind, so I'm sharing from my experience. Learn to slow down. Yeah. You can have a regular rhythm, but once in a while, you have to have a day for yourself where you really commit to slowing down. Just like when you've committed to come to this retreat, you've committed to a whole week of slowing down, going against the pace of what is out there. And this is a training to help us to really stop and savor what's going on in our lives. So once in a while, you'll need a kind of intensive training like that. But on a regular basis, you can find different ways to have pockets of the day where you can slow down. Meditation is available to you 24 hours a day. So you can choose. You have so many opportunities to slow down in one day. Yeah.
Hi. My English is not very good, so I try to do the question in English, and if I have a problem, the brother Italian help me. Okay, my question is about the practice and about the sexual energy. In my practice and in my experience, I look for to study my sexual energy and to management it. My question is, we are a sexual creature, so sex is normal, and it is normal that I have sex energy. But I want to develop it, it is my part, with conscious. There is one risk to repressive sexual energy, and so realize the opposite effect. Because if we do repressing something, this thing go in an aggressive way. In my experience, I think that if I realize one transformation and I transform this sexual energy in love, this is the solution. But during this traveling, in your experience, what is the method, the operation to realize this management? To understand well the repli, come back in position, the Italian position. Can I go? No, I go to my seat with my brother. Okay, because it's important to understand. I'm here to understand, not to question.
Okay, so I just restate the question. So it's about how to manage sexual energy without repressing it. So you very much want to learn how to take care or how to understand and study this sexual energy. And we, as you said, we are sexual creatures. And you want to learn how to study and manage sexual energy without repressing it. I love Italian. It has many. Use your hands a lot, right, to communicate. So, dear Thai, dear Sangha. So I feel, for myself, understanding sexual energy is at the core of my practice. We are celibate monks and nuns, and. Yeah, I think in the tradition we say if there was an energy stronger than sexual energy, then it would be too difficult to practice. And that's the way I experience it as well, because there's so we have about at least 1 billion or probably at least 500 million years of history on this planet as sexual beings in some shape or form. And if we look at it from the perspective of natural selection, every successive generation which has a strong sexual energy and is able to reproduce itself so that its genes continue on, it is reinforced, right? So so I have a lot of, that's the way I practice, to have compassion on myself, to understand that this energy, it's quite natural that it's so strong, because it has been passed on from generation to generation because of sexual reproduction. And so actually we are conditioned in many ways because of our ancestors, both human, monkey-like, you know, mammal-like, fish-like, to reproduce sexually. And so that energy has been reinforced over hundreds of millions of years. So that understanding helps me to understand myself already. Yeah. but I also found that sexual energy is nourished by food, by kind of food, not just edible food, but by the food of our sense impressions, the food of our volition, the food of our consciousness, both individual and collective. And what I learned as I started to practice was that there is this native sexual energy which is coming to me from our ancestors. But there's also the conditioning that I've received since I was from the time I was a baby, which has fed and developed this sexual energy, conditioned it beyond what I've just received from my ancestors. And I was astounded to find out how much that sex drive has been conditioned by, the songs I listen to, the ads that I see when I go into town, when I turn on the television, when I go on the internet. I mean, literally, it's like a kind of non-stop buffet of, we could say, watering the seeds of sexual energy and the sex drive, almost every direction we turn. And so I feel it's a pity that that's not part of a larger discourse that we're having as a society, because we talk a lot about not wanting to repress sexual energy, but we don't really recognize all the ways in which we are feeding that and actually making it stronger. And in my experience looking into the energy in myself and also seeing how it has devastating effects out in the world. I mean, right now in the US, everyone's reeling at the situation around the wealthy financier who's, abusing 14-year-old girls, 15-year-old girls his whole life. And where does that come from? So, of course, we have this innate sexual drive, but how are we nourishing that further by our sense impressions, by our volition, and our consciousness on a day-to-day basis? That's where the practice comes in. I don't know that I would still be a monk now if I was not living here in this community. It'd be too difficult to practice celibacy, because I was very clear, I don't want to be a monk and repress my sexual energy. And so when I started practicing mindfulness, I was very aware of that. I said, this energy is very strong in me. But I was determined to look at what ways on a daily basis I was actually making that energy stronger, and how by my consumption of the internet, of just going into the supermarket and these romantic songs going through my head and then getting stuck in my head for 5 days over and over, like in what ways are those things nourishing that sexual energy and making it stronger so that I cannot handle it anymore. And so in the moment I act in ways that I'm not proud of when I'm around an attractive woman. In my case, attractive woman. So that is a practice of deep looking into the nutriment, a kind of food that we're consuming day in and day out. I noticed when I came to Plum Village, or even when I just spent a week in the retreat, that energy became calmer. Actually, even before coming to one of our centers, I noticed that when I would, because I said I like to go hiking, so I started meditation practice, spending a lot of time in the forest. I was very attracted to that quality of Buddhist practice. The Buddha said, go to a forest, sit at the foot of a tree, go to an empty place. And that's not just a romantic, like, oh, let's be in nature. But now we know it's a science of the mind. They're studying the effects of forest bathing on our psychology, and it's very concrete. So it's not just romantic, let's go into the forest, but it's actually our native habitat. And I noticed when I do that, when I'd go out and I'd backpack for a week or 2 weeks, spend time in nature. I recommend to all of you, by the way, if you have time after this week, see if you can go and just spend time in nature before you go back to your jobs, before you go back to whatever it is that's part of your daily life. That's what I practiced when I went on my first retreats. I would spend a week just by myself in nature. And it was very, very helpful because I could digest what I was receiving on the retreat and see, without all this constructed cultural input that was, I know, feeding, amongst other things, my sexual energy. So I spent time, in nature without all these, elements of society that were nourishing my sexual energy. And I found that it calmed down quite a bit. There was no repression going on. It became much more calm, and it was not driving my daily need, my daily actions so strongly as when I was sitting in an artificially constructed house with 4 walls and no kind of input from the green leaves, the trees, the native habitat that we as human beings are evolved to live in over hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. So we need to look in how we're nourishing, because just being in a closed artificial space is also a source of nutriment. So this is the insight the Buddha had. Whatever manifests, it needs food. Nothing can survive without food, including our sexual energy. So rather than, we don't repress our sexual energy, but we look into removing the nutriment. If you have a fire, if you remove the logs, like the bonfire the other night, the fire dies down. There's no repressing the fire. You're removing the fuel, which is nourishing the fire. That is the approach that I take with sexual energy. I remove the fuel, and the fuel is my sense input, my volition, my consciousness. And I see that the energy becomes less strong. It's very interesting. Just try practicing with this phrase. Nothing can survive without food, including our sexual energy. So see, what way am I feeding my sexual energy in my daily life? And if you have time, come to Plum Village and stay for a while. You'll see. I mean, talk to I think some of you watched a beautiful film yesterday about the long-terms who are staying here in Plum Village, and so you can please go up to them and ask them about that. Don't just trust the monks and nuns. We are here for a long time, and we chose a celibate lifestyle because we had that insight. Yeah? So I hope that is a start. I think it's not the end to understanding sexual energy, but it's a place to start. Okay, good luck.
I just wanted to add one thing, but it's in French, but the documentary which was done by Simon and Zoe yesterday, Simon did 3 beautiful interviews of our brother Phap about sexual energy. Quite very beautiful and very informative interview. And so it will give you a more inspiration how to practice. And I'm very grateful to my brother. I listened to the interview and I found it's very courageous to all his answers that he gives to all the questions that were asked to him. So thank you so much for that. But I think it's only in French, I think. Maybe it will be subtitled by Zoe sometime. But it's I Have a Dream. This is the title of the link where you go. I Have a Dream official, and then you can click the Phap interview, and then you will find them about sexual energy. Thank you.
Hiya. I have a question just about accessing your emotions when you have a time where you can sit with them. I find that I know I experience pain and other emotions, and these will come up for me when I'm under pressure. But when I actually want to sit and reflect and sit with my emotions, I find it can sometimes be like there's a block, that I can't bring them up for myself to be able to sit and observe and work through them that way. So I wonder, have you any advice on how I can bring that up for myself to sit with when I am in a space to do so?
Okay, so I just restate the question. So you know that you have difficult emotions, like, but when you sit to actually look into those emotions, then you find that they're not coming up for you to. There's a block, and so how can you do? What should you do? Should you or find a way to bring those emotions up so that you can look into them when you're sitting with them? Yeah.
Dear, dear community, dear friend, what I do is more to feel. I want to look into the emotion because I can still feel that it stays inside of me someplace, and there is a suffering someplace in myself. So I know that this is making me wanted to understand what happened. But the emotion just passed. I mean, it's impermanent. So I can recognize that it doesn't stay. The emotion just passed. But it left an imprint in me, in a kind of suffering. And I go back to my body and try to feel where it's there in the body, and what happened. Try to bring back to mind how did I felt when the emotion came through me. But and I look at all the different. It's to look at all the different conditions who trigger the emotion, and to recognize and understand. Okay, maybe I was tired, and maybe someone told me a word or told me something which made me suffer, or I had a thought, or something happened that I saw, and to understand all these different conditions. But I'm not trying to bring back the emotion within me to understand it, but more to kind of look what triggered the emotion and what it touched in me, and to kind of because the emotion is touching a sensitive point or something in me that I don't it there, maybe buried. Like buried inside, who was from the past, and so it just touched it, and so like that I can bring some awareness. Or there is something there in me which needs to be listened to, looked at, to pause and try to understand myself. What is there? What's happening? So it's to allow, just to, by stopping, coming back to the breath, and not forcing. Okay, I need to understand. I need to, and I'm trying to analyze. This will not work. It's more to let it come up, whatever, and to listen to yourself, listen to the body. What is not to force, and to have patience and to have compassion for ourselves, and see myself is more like recognizing, okay, what are the conditions around me, and just letting it come. And as we go, sometimes we think, oh, I understand this emotion comes from that and that, but in fact we will discover more and more and more. And to go through emotion and to understand it's wonderful. It's not to take our emotion as enemies, but more as friends who are going to help us to understand ourselves deeper and deeper and deeper. So it's more to see to recognize, oh, this made me suffer, and this made some other people suffer. The emotion I went through, maybe I suffered, but maybe some emotion, maybe the emotion of anger, for example, or jealousy, or then this, maybe I created some suffering. So it's to recognize, oh, this emotion that I went through created suffering, or what happened in me, what's the situation, so, like that. Thank you so much for your question.
Dear Sangha, my heart is beating, but my girlfriend and I share a very deep connection and deep friendship, and we've been in a long-distance relationship for 3 years because she lives in the US and I live in London at the moment. And over the years, I find that our deep connection sometimes has been covered up with a lot of frustration, anger, misunderstanding, and right now, we're both practitioners, and trying to get back to that connection. And she's trying to see if we can move closer to each other. But she's doing very good with her freelance business, and I'm doing very well. And there's a lot of things that are very difficult for us to do that, and also I find that she we're both meeting also like other people and maybe develop feelings for them, and my question is related to I've been struggling with for a long time how to solve this and how to get closer in my connection to my girlfriend. And when I walked into the bookshop last week, at one point I was looking at the card rack and I just saw these like 2 big words kind of staring at me. It said, "Let go." When I saw that, I felt that I had to cry, and I never cry when I stare at a card rack. So I bought the card, and I felt there was something there that that was important, even though I don't want to let go, or like there's some fear in me. So my question is, how can I let go of the outcome of our relationship? So how our relationship will be in the future, if we will be together, if we will be partners, if she will find a different man, if we won't be able to move closer because of our jobs, and how to heal that, how to let go of that when our connection is so deep. Thank you.
So the question is, it's about your relationship with your girlfriend. So you're separated by a distance, but to have a deep connection with each other for 3 years, and so and sometimes she is also meeting other people and maybe has feelings for them, and so how, with this deep connection and wanting to maintain the relationship, how can you let go of your expectation about how this relationship will go in the future?
So, dear Thai, dear community, dear friend, I think one of the very important aspects of the practice is that it requires you to be courageous sometimes. So there are moments where you have a choice. There's sort of like a choice ahead of you, and whatever thing you choose, it requires a lot of courage. So there is part of us that doesn't want to move, doesn't want to make the choice. We tend to drag it a very long time, because to choose anything, it means to close a door and to open something else, and we're sort of stepping into the unknown. And it's very hard. Letting go is a very tricky practice. I like some time ago, Phap gave a teaching, and he shared, letting go. If you're holding a cup, it's not like to throw it away and smash it, somewhere. Letting go, sometimes it might be just holding it with your palm open. You're not grasping. You're not holding tight to it. It's there. The cup is there. You're not letting it fall. I think whatever you choose, you'll have some suffering. But the most suffering is if you don't choose anything. Because you won't be able to live if you don't choose something. You can just feel the emotion. It's okay. Pain is good. Pain is your friend. Pain is your guide sometimes. Maybe we can listen to one sound of the bell and breathe together. Sometimes the question is, do we choose love or do we choose ambition? Do we choose relationship or do we choose freedom? Those are very big questions, you know. But I believe communication is always the most important thing. Because if you're in a relationship, what you choose is not just a matter of your happiness. It's also, you know, you're participating into something with the other person too. And so you need to take some time maybe to sit together and to begin anew. Maybe you're very lucky. If your partner is a practitioner, maybe you'll be able to have a very clear-headed talk about this. And it will be a very good moment. Whatever you choose, whatever you'd end up choosing, you'll remember that moment as the moment you grew up and you learned how to stand on your feet. Because you had to let go of something. So that act of letting go of something, you know, it makes what you choose very precious and very important. And before you have that talk, you might want to have some time to sit with yourself and see what really is that fear. What really is that feeling, you know, that you'll be facing. You know, it might be loneliness, it might be sadness, the fear of being alone, or the fear of losing security. Sometimes all of these are very deep feelings that we have to face sometimes. And you have to get acquainted to them. You have become friends because they are part of you, so you have to sit with it for a while and you have to observe it. And then maybe when you get into a conversation, you know, at that point you might be able to have real communication and you might be a real spiritual friends with the other person. It's not easy. It's okay. Good luck.
Hello, good morning everyone. I'm very interested in Buddhism, and right now I'm exploring different traditions in Buddhism to see the differences, to see what suits me more. So when I come here, so it's the first time that I come across Zen Buddhism. And actually, so there are two aspects that I found quite different from other traditions that I came across. So I'm intrigued. I want to know like the reasons behind this. So the first aspect is in other traditions, monks and nuns, they don't eat dinner because somewhere it's written that the Buddha says that do not eat after midday. And when I arrive here, so to my surprise, monks and nuns are allowed to have dinner here. So I want to know why. And the second aspect also in other traditions that I come across, so usually they say in the teachings that you need to maintain your mind calm and peaceful, so neither towards the joy nor towards the sadness. It has to be calm and unaffected by anything, whether it's very low or very down. But when I came here, I saw the emphasis that you guys place on joy. So this also intrigues me because then it's not like so much the middle way, but we are like tending to like the joy side. Whereas in other tradition, whenever I say, okay, is it allowed to be joyful or whatever, and then they always like, No. You have to be like calm. So, so joy is not okay. So yeah, so this is my question. I want to understand the reasons between these two, and whether it's maybe another different interpretation of the same Buddhist text. I don't know. Yeah, so that's my question.
So just to restate the question, so you're inspired by Buddhism, you're exploring different traditions, and you notice that here we have the two things that are intrigue you, and one of them is that the monks and nuns eat dinner. And the second one is that we talk a lot about cultivating joy instead of just being like Zen. Yeah, okay. Sister Langnim is very Zen.
Do you have dinner?
I think to understand anything, the first thing we need to do is to let go of our ideas. And if we want to understand Buddhism, the first things we need to throw away are our ideas about Buddhism. If we want to understand the Buddha, we have to throw away our ideas about the Buddha. And actually the Buddha said this: if you want to know about the Buddha, you have to kill the Buddha. Pretty strong language, but the idea is that to understand the Buddha, first of all, you have to lay down your ideas about the Buddha, because that's what is blocking you from touching the true nature of the Buddha. Just like coming here in Plum Village, and we carry so many different ideas about so many different traditions of Buddhism or other mindfulness practice centers or other forms of therapy or other forms of healing or practices. And then our mind is so busy comparing, and there's this parallel dialogue going on in our mind all the time, and it really prevents us from seeing or hearing or touching what's right there in front of us. So coming back to mindfulness, coming back to allowing ourselves to immerse in the present moment. Bring your mind home to the present moment and get in touch with what's really going on in your body and in your environment right now. And that way you have a chance to understand better yourself, your environment, and even Plum Village. But if we spend our days comparing texts that Plum Village has written or to other texts, or comparing the Plum Village tradition to other traditions, we have very little chance of really understanding Plum Village or the practices offered here. So the invitation is come home to the present moment and discover for yourself. This is also what the Buddha taught. Any teaching you have to discover for yourself. No matter how eloquent the teacher is, how respectful, how marvelous, how enchanting the teachers are, you have to still discover his or her teachings for yourself. Examine them in the light of your own experiences, in the light of your own, of your daily life. Yeah, and then we have a chance to understand. You might want to explore dinner or no dinner yourself.
Dear Thai, dear Sangha, my question is, what is it to be enlightened, and in enlightenment, is there space for the ego?
Okay, so the question is, what does it mean to be enlightened? And in enlightenment, is there space for the ego? So, so I was just deeply enjoying my sister's response to the last question. It's right on. So it's it's difficult to express what we feel, and when we feel great joy, great bliss, great freedom, although we express it using those words, that's just this is the tip of the iceberg for the experience of bliss, the experience of great joy. And what I admire deeply about living in community, in a practice community, about our teachers' teachings, about the Buddha's teaching, that there are many, many entry points. And it seems those entry points are designed to meet many, many different people in different conditions and situations. But we're all going in the same direction, which is we want to be happy, we want to be free. And when the Buddha talked about enlightenment, he could not put any words to describe it. He tried to call it unsurpassed enlightenment, nirvana, the unconditioned. He tried to put many words on it, but that he said that ultimately there's no way to describe in words the experience of awakening. So it's important to remember that, because I can say enlightenment is this, enlightenment is that, but ultimately it's going to be inadequate to describe the actual experience of freedom, of happiness, of the vastness of living without obstacles in our mind, living without any kind of fear, any kind of anxiety. I think it's always going to be inadequate. So it's not, there's no words to describe enlightenment. So don't get too caught in the word enlightenment. It's only one approximation of describing the same experience, which is, maybe in the Christian tradition they might say touching the Godhead, or experiencing God. It's all just words to describe an experience of lightness, of expansiveness, of non-fear, of great bliss. Yeah. But none of those words is adequate, and even all those words together is not adequate to describe it. And we have also kind of enlightenment which just happens in an instant, when we get an insight about ourselves. And then there's a kind of unsurpassed enlightenment which lasts a long time. But sometimes we think we get that enlightenment, and then we find out tomorrow that we wake up and we feel pretty lousy. And we have a lot of suffering, and we get angry at our roommate or our partner, and then suddenly, where did the enlightenment go? So don't get too caught in the words, but really look in your everyday experience. Thai often said, we can be a part-time Buddha. So that's to help us to free us from the idea, because we get a lot of young people who come here and suddenly enlightened, and then they're so enlightened that when they go out of the meditation hall, they put on someone else's shoes and they think, what does it matter? It's not my shoes, it's not your shoes. So we say that's like you're caught in the ultimate dimension. You can also get caught in the ultimate, your idea of enlightenment. So you have to be free from your idea of enlightenment. So the Buddha gave this teaching on non-self to help people to see that we are only made of non-us elements. So when I look deeply into a carrot, for example, when I practice eating meditation, I see that the carrot is made up of the sun, the rain, the earth, of the ancestors of that carrot that were maybe much less sweet in the wild than the modern carrot, but because of selection, that carrot became sweeter and sweeter, and so I get to eat the delicious sweet carrot that I find at the organic farm now. So all those elements go into making that the nutriment, we can say, the food that's required for that carrot to be there on my plate. And that's not just for the sake of understanding deeply a carrot, but it's to help us to look deeply into ourselves and see that we are only made of non-us elements, and that we are made up of our mother, our father, hundreds of millions of years of ancestors in many forms and shapes of life. We are made up of the stones of the earth. We are made up of a supernova. Without the supernova, we would not have iron and all the heavier elements. It would all be just hydrogen and very light elements. But because of these massive explosions of stars, we have this body. And we know that the earth is also made up of a supernova. So looking deeply in that way, we see that there's no separate entity we can call a self or an ego or a soul, but rather we just attach concepts. We like my brother shared about grabbing on to ideas about ourselves, like what we like, what we don't like, who we are. I like this, I'm this kind of person. This is my personality. I'm a type AB, I'm an introverted. What are the, I can't remember, Jungian archetypes, so, or I'm a Pisces or whatever. So these are all just ways that we grasp onto ideas and concepts. And it turns out that can also obscure our view of how things actually are. So like Brother Phap shared skillfully the other day, one model is to think about this manas, which is always looking for survival. It's like it gets backed in a corner and it's always lashing out, and its way of lashing out is to grasp on to the seeds deep in our consciousness and treat them as if they are me, mine, or myself. And so Freud called that the ego. It's not, exactly the same, but it's roughly, you can say it's the same. So yes, enlightenment has enough space for the ego. But you don't need an ego for enlightenment. In fact, it's a big obstacle to enlightenment. But when we have that expansiveness, that freedom, we're not caught by other people's ego. And we're not caught anymore by our own ideas about who we are. Because we can see in every moment we are only made up of non-us elements. So we are not separate from Mother Earth. We are just one manifestation of a larger organism, you can call Gaia, which is also just one part of a larger universe, which is in us and around us in every moment. And so the ego can be a big obstacle to our enlightenment, but there's enough space for the ego in enlightenment. It means we have patience. We can be a good spiritual friend for ourselves first, and also for others. Because it's quite normal to think, I am like this. I have this personality, I have this name, I come from this place. But Mother Earth doesn't care about any of that. So she has a lot of patience for us. And inclusiveness. Also for our ego. Like human beings, we have an ego. We like to think we are separate from other kinds of living beings. We are somehow more important. That's a kind of ego. An egotistical way, a human-centric way of looking at this organism, this body. And it's because of that we cause a lot of suffering, a lot of destruction of biodiversity on the planet, destruction of the atmosphere. We seriously threatening the future of our children. And so we're not so the ego can obstruct our true intelligence. So I find it's not very helpful. And mostly it's helpful more to let go. To let go of my idea of who I am. Because then I can see more clearly things as they are. So that's freedom. So I hope that goes in the direction of clarity. Okay. Thank you.
Dear brothers and sisters, my question is if there's a way to cultivate wholesome dreams. So I often experience anxiety and fear, which make me feel quite powerless. Because I don't know how to take care of them while I'm sleeping. And often these feelings stick onto my body when I wake up, so I don't really know what happened, but my mind tries to smile and start the day, but my body still feels these feelings. Yeah. Thank you.
So the question is there a way to cultivate having wholesome dreams so that we feel at ease in our body and mind after, when we wake up?
Dear Thai, dear community, dear friend, when I have a dream, and I remember that, because sometimes we have dream and we don't remember the next day, because we have, and there is different time of the night. It depends which time of the night you remember the dream you had, because normally when there is dream from the deep sleep, they come from our stored consciousness, and there are things we're touched during the day, or things from the past can come up in form of dream. And then there is a dream from the early morning, when the mind, we wake up and then we stay in bed, and we say, oh no, I sleep a little longer, and then we have all kind of weird dreams, and it's more because the mind starts going. So I don't know which type of dream you're speaking about. Is it more the early morning dream or the dream from the deep sleep dream? The deep sleep dream, yeah. So is myself, I always differentiate to see, is it an early dream because I stayed in bed and my mind is active, or is it a dream from the deep state sleep? And if it's that, what I do, I write it down. I write it down, and because the dream are informing us of things which are inside of us that we cannot understand from our mind consciousness. There are things in our store consciousness that are only accessible. They will come up by themselves. So sometimes the dream can bring things up because things were touching us during the day, or what we watched, what we heard. So it's not to be afraid of the dream, but to look that they are helping us. If sometimes it's a powerful dream who can bring some fear, but in fact they are telling us, showing us different things of ourselves that we cannot access. Maybe we want to know, but we cannot access with the mind consciousness. And so it's to write down, and then maybe later on, that's what I do. Sometimes I look at my journal from a few years ago, and then I look at the dream that I wrote, and that I forgot about it. But then I understand, oh, yeah, this was why I had this dream. And so this one part. And then the other part is to look what I... and this was shared before, is our consumption. What do I consume? What do I watch, and what I'm hearing, and everything which is surrounding me, which is very powerful. And then we because maybe we think that we are able to direct our thought, or okay, I'm going to only to watch this, but then we are affected by everything around us. So that's why all the environment, everything comes in. So it's affecting us. So it's to recognize that what do I, if I want to have a wholesome dream, is more, is I will say more that to accept the dream as they are, and kind of not having a judgment about my dream, or this dream is good and this dream is not wholesome and it's wholesome, but more have curiosity about the dream. What they want to tell me, and they help to understand ourselves better. So it's not to don't bring a judgment or a blame, oh, this is not wholesome, because then we understand, and what do I want with my life, and what do I surround myself with, the environment, what do I watch, which music, everything, how do I nourish myself, and then in the evening is to try to be away from screen, not to look at the internet, the phone and everything, and not to see the conversation that we have. They will affect our dream a lot too. So it's to try, to be quiet in the evening, do sitting meditation if you can, to empty ourselves from our day, to do a walking meditation. And if we feel very agitated, to try to bring some calmness within ourselves, and to calm the body, maybe do some exercise, go for a walk, or do more, if we had a very stressful day or a lot of things happen, is to try to have it circulate through the body, doing some body movement and deep relaxation to kind of prepare ourselves. And then not to be afraid of the dream. Some dream, maybe we have fear in a dream, and it's very powerful, but it's to, if we can, with the practice of mindfulness, and the mindfulness will come up in our dream. We will be mindful, and then we will be able to look at the fear within our dream. And then we will not send the fear, it's just there. We will see, oh, something huge, but in fact it's, when I look at it, oh, it's just diminished. It's just our mind which is constructing things. So it's very, dreams can be very informative, and Yeah, but I will not classify them. That's it. Thank you so much for your question.
So we'll listen to the sound of the bell, and then first we'll take a written question, and then. So there are a number of questions about having a low self-esteem or anxiety in relationships. So how to overcome rejection in a romantic relationship. When we have a low self-esteem and feel responsible for being rejected. How to deal with social anxiety, insecurity. How to stop comparing myself in a negative way to others. When I see beautiful people that do beautiful things, I wish I felt inspired, but often I feel like shit. Because I compare myself. I'm just reading what's on the paper. And this question maybe is going in the direction of an answer. Dear friends, is there a formal practice or technique to train upeksha? It means inclusiveness or equanimity. Thank you.
So dear friends, I'm sorry, the first thing that comes to my mind, I apologize first, but I wonder how shit feels. You know? I think she's got no problem, you know. I apologize for that. But, you know, when you look at nature, when you look around of yourself, and you can see this, right? You take a walk in the forest, you have sometimes when you're truly there, when you're really centered, you have the perception that everything is beautiful, right? You have just the way you look at things makes everything around yourself beautiful. The light that shines through the trees, the wind blowing, the animals. And that is an experience of the practice, that is an experience of the present moment. That is enjoying what is there. And if you look deeply actually at the way nature works, it's pretty traumatizing, it's pretty horrible, right? There is animal eating animal, there is trees. The tree dies because it's struck by lightning, and you know there is a whole world of you know this brutality that happens at the same time of beauty. And oftentimes our mind wants to cut and only get the beautiful part. We want to chop in half and just see life as one side, that everything has to be beautiful. Right? Everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be pure. And that is why oftentimes we come to a practice center and we start getting annoyed at things. Because our expectation is quite high sometimes. want everybody to be perfect, you know. It's like, oh, she's dressed up like that, she should be in some monastery, you know, this and that. Or, you know, or like, you know, you're sitting in the morning and then the person next to you is making a whole lot of noise, changing posture and breathing hard, and you go, oh my gosh, you know. And I think once you understand the principle and once you stop looking outside of yourself, you also start feeling that there is a lot of beauty even in that. You know, sometimes your sitting meditation is just not as settled as other days. Things happen around you. But that's the beauty of life. You know, somebody comes in, somebody makes a noise. And that's just the way it is. And it's fine also. You don't always need to experience that little peace, that perfection, that beauty that we're always looking, that we're always craving for. You know, so early on somebody asked about, like, you know, somebody talked about having our mind kind of like a flat brainwave, you know, kind of not extreme, not too good, not too joyful, and not too low, you know, not being sad, and just like in the middle. And I guess that is, I don't feel that is a very helpful way to look at the practice. A practice is not to be kind of shut down, you know, kind of not to respond to things, apathic, you know, you don't have any emotion, you just, I don't care, you know. But it's sometimes, I believe it's much more about not being obsessed by the extremes. It's like, okay, fine, it's good if you have a moment of joy, if you can have one. You don't need to choose to suffer. It's okay to enjoy something, you know. But don't be too obsessed about it, because sometimes you're trying to plan for something, you're trying to plan for a holiday, and it doesn't turn out the way you want it. It just turned out as something else. And so if you have that capacity of letting go, you're not too attached to that, then, you know, you experience what it means to be in the middle. It's not about not liking things or not disliking and just kind of being dead, like in the middle. It's more about, you know, okay, this is happening, you embrace life, you allow life to happen, and you just include it in your world, whatever it is, whether it's beautiful or not. And so first of all, if you want to be able to do that with the outside, you need to be able to turn that light inward and look at yourself. You know, okay, there are things that you don't like about yourself. There are things that we dislike. Personally, there's this one seed I receive, you know, the seed of disliking myself, kind of self-hatred, of feeling like I'd much rather be somebody else. You know, I don't like my voice when I sing. I don't like, you know, the way I look when I see myself on video, you know, and then this video is on YouTube for, you know, 500 million people, you know, and I don't like that. But it's fine, you know, you just like, you don't need to spend too much time with that thought. And at the same time, you can spend a bit more time with the things that are good and that you do have that are nice. And you don't need to look very far. I mean, you have two eyes. That is something really beautiful. That is something really amazing. Can you rejoice of that? You have two legs that are in good health. Can you take a moment of joy and just feel confident that you have two legs that really work well? You can walk. You can practice walking meditation. You can go out and have a walk in the forest. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that worth living already? You don't need to be a good singer, a good guitar player, a good actor, or a good leader, or a good, you know, business leader, whatever. You know, society throws at you so many things. And we grew up in the age of dispersion. You know, there are a couple of 100 companies that are competing to steal your attention so that they can sell you their view of life, their view of what they think is good for you to do. You know, it's the age of TED Talks. In 1 hour, you can listen to 3 TED Talks, and 3 people are going to tell you all about how perfect is their research and how cool it is, and and it looks really beautiful. And oftentimes it's really interesting, and they all look bright and happy. And it's like, geez, I got to figure out something about my life. And we have to look at that. We have to look at that tendency, because it is really stealing away from us the present moment and our inner and innate capacity of just enjoy what is there. You don't need to be beautiful. You don't need to be perfect, because you are beautiful anyways. You are perfect on some level anyways. Can you spend some time in your walking meditation and just say, with your in-breath, you say, I love you. I love you. You do 2 steps. And with your out-breath, you say, you are beautiful. You are beautiful. Now you have to practice that until you can feel it in your body. I really love myself. I really love you. And I really am beautiful to some extent. Even I am beautiful sometimes. It's possible to do that. You don't need to look very far. So when you see your mind turning outward and starting to compare, and starting to do too much of that kind of looking out at what other people are doing and thinking, I have to get something going in my life too. Maybe it's the time that you need to take a break and you need to live with yourself a little bit, because you've forgotten your inner landscape for too long. You've forgotten what's inside of you. And some of the feeling has been growing and growing and growing. And maybe that insecurity is there to teach you that you need to fulfill yourself before you look outside. And once you feel fulfilled, you look outside, everything is good. Being a monk, we have a really privileged view of society. And it's kind of cool. When we are there, I had the chance to be in San Francisco and to go to a very big business conference, and that is like successful America, kind of facade, and everything is cool. Everybody's empowered, happy, doing things, changing the world. Everybody's young and beautiful, and it's got a lot of money. And we had to sit and do a stand in the middle of this huge business conference. And I was sitting there and just kind of waiting and feeling out of place. I'm like, what am I doing here? But this is part of what our community decided to offer to this company that's organizing this business conference. And this woman walked up to me and she sat down. And we were kind of having this place, so people could come and do some sitting meditation and have a chance to talk to a monk and see, something different. That's California. It's kind of cool, isn't it? You can do that. And this woman sat next to me, and I didn't say anything. Successful woman, very beautiful dress, and everything you got. And I didn't say anything. She started crying. She completely broke down in front of me. And the next 10 minutes I spent talking about how she's feeling and how you're really feeling and what it is, and just trying to connect to her feelings a little bit more. And it was a very beautiful moment. It was a moment in which, kind of there's a window opens in that facade of success and beauty and everything else. And you sort of see that inside the house is pretty messy. We've forgotten the inside because we're focusing too much on how things look like. So it's all good, right, to have very beautiful ideas and to consume a lot of YouTube videos and TED Talks that are very nourishing, people doing amazing things around the world is fine. But do not let that take over your inner space. So once you see that becoming too much, you have to be able to take a break from the society, from the scene, because people are just pulling you the way they want. And they know what they're doing, Very smart people are there advertising you. And if you don't know what you want, there's couple of millions of people that are very ready to tell you what you want, so you need to know it. And to know it, you need to be present. You need to train yourself to be rooted in the present moment and to really have a contact with your inner feelings and emotions and reactions. You gotta know that. In today's society, with the fact that we're all holding a phone that is kind of like the bridge between these companies, these people, to our mind, we're opening them a window to our mind. So we need to know our mind better than they do. And sometimes we don't. Believe me, sometimes other people know our mind better than we do. So that is a journey that we really need to embark ourselves in. We need to spend time with ourselves, access our inner world, and start to discover what's in there, so that we can fully hold our life in our hands and not be pulled around by the waves of society that sometimes they go that way, sometimes they go the other way. And you find yourself drifting in these oceans of, ideas and beauty and, exterior appearances, and nothing fulfills you at that point. So fulfillment is done by you, with yourself, alone. You don't need anything else. Thank you.
So dear friends, we've gone a little bit over time, so this will be the last question. And then I hope those of you who have questions, I hope you can write them down, because I think Sister True Dedication will answer them all tomorrow. No pressure.
Okay, I will make it quick. How do you practice non-attachment when it comes to relationships in order not to suffer if someone is not around you, you would have wanted to be there?
Okay, so how can we practice non-attachment in relationships? For example, when we want somebody to be there and they're not there. So like romantic relationship or any kind? Any kind.
Yeah, it's to feel the person within yourself. In fact, the whole world is within ourselves. So is a person with who we want to have a relationship with, alive or not alive anymore, is we can still find the person within ourselves. So is to connect with this part, because we are all part of each other and part of the nature, part of Mother Earth. So Mother Earth and everyone is part of us. So it's to connect with this part of the person we want to have a relationship with within ourselves. And sometimes for sure we want to connect with part of ourselves which are beautiful and that we love, but there is other part that sometimes we have a very difficult relationship with someone else, and because it's touching part of ourselves that we don't want to have a relationship with. So it's like relationship is first with ourselves, and within ourselves there is everyone else and everything else, and in the other people then if we have a relationship with ourselves and all this part, 100% of ourselves, that means all the different parts that, part that we don't want to see, that we don't want to show, that then we can have a relationship with everyone around us, and we will understand everyone. So will be my quick answer will be to the person is present within us, and to feel the person, even if the person is not alive anymore, we can still have a very deep relationship and connection with them. We can feel that they sit with us, that they walk when we do walking meditation, when we eat in mindfulness, when mindfulness is really present in us, we are aware that they are still living through us, then we want to offer them the best. And we want to offer them our smile, our happiness, our joy, and it's the same for people who are alive, to who we want to have relationship with. Is to we know that if we feel happy, then we can send them this happiness. If we feel peace, we can send them this peace and wish peace for them. And because we are energy, so we are not. So all this energy come together. I hope it answers to your question. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for all the wonderful questions. I think we'd be happy to sit here for another hour and continue. But we want to support as well the service meditation and the happy farm, and so we can just let all of these answers, all this discussion just go into the earth. Yeah, it's all just an experience to help us to see into our own mind, to have clarity. So it's not about holding on to the answer, but just letting go. And I feel grateful to sit here with my brothers and sisters, and also with those of you asking the questions. We do this together. It's not just one person's answer, but it's a collective response to this experience of deep looking. So thank you for being here, and we'll listen to 3 sounds of the bell to finish.